Well, okay, fine. So today we are going to start our discussion on the Greek historiography, one of the oldest civilization that has also started a trend in the kind of writing that we generally refer to as history now. I hope everybody is from English medium. If there is anybody from Hindi medium, let me know. Well, now Greek, in a way, have contributed a lot to the knowledge creation in the world. In the 6th and 7th century, that civilization has progressed and it has made contribution to the political thought, to philosophy, as well as to literature, to sculpture, art, architecture, and as well as to history. And The cultural development doesn't come out of blue. It grows very slowly. There is a lot of background behind that. And History, in a fact, has emerged from literature, especially the oral literature. During the 6th and 7th century, the people in Greek, they developed a class of people or group of people who used to go around the different towns and villages and in the different assemblies, and they will sing the bardic songs. If you know Marathi, you must have heard what is called povadas. In povadas, a hero, he is eulized, he is being made larger than life. There are povadas related to certain events. There are certain povadas like Tanaji's povada, the Maratha warrior who reconquered the fort of Kondhana for Chhatrapati Shivaji. And These kind of songs, generally, they have a hero who is very brave, who is an ancestor, and the story narrated in this kind of bardic song or in this kind of povada, they are generally mixture of historical fact and myth. And that is what used to happen in the 6th and 7th century BC in Greece. The logographers, the singers, they will go around from place to place and they will sing the song either about the mythical character or about the ancestors. And obviously, these songs had historical facts and myth both mixed together. During the same period, in the case of literature, two important Greek epics were also written by Homer, that is Iliad and Odyssey. Like we have two important epics in India, like Ramayana and Mahabharata. Similarly, these two epical poems in the Greek language gives us an insight into the mindset of the people of Greece, as Ramayana and Mahabharata gives us an insight into the Indian way of thinking, Indian way of perceiving life, looking at life. Now, if I feel if certain dimensions of life are making progress, it affects every other dimension. As the literature, science, philosophy, as it was all growing, how the history can be left behind. And there was this young boy of 6 years named Herodotus. And when he was of 6 years, the long drawn war between Iran, Persia, it is also called Persia, long drawn war between Iran and Greece has ended. The war continued for 20 years. In fact, significant area of Greece was conquered by Iran. The Greece were controlled by Iran, and the people of Greece, they were divided into the different states. They joined hands together. They unified themselves, if not all, but the significant state in the Greece. And then they fought a long drawn war of independence, 20 years war of independence against Iran or Persia. And in that war, they came out successfully. That means they became independent. And many of the people who fought in the war, they came back to their home. And as usually happens, people who come from the battlefront, they usually have a lot of stories to tell, stories of bravery, stories of conquest, stories of sacrifices. Similarly, these people who came back to their home in Greece after 20 years of war, they used to tell lot many stories about the war. And this fascinated this young boy, Herodotus. But he was a learned, he was from Ionia, and Ionia was a place in Greece which was known for a lot of literary and intellectual activities. And here this young boy started feeling inquisitive that whatever is being narrated to me by the people who are coming back from the battlefront, are they the real facts? Or there is something that is mixed up? Am I just getting the one version of the stories? Only the Greeks are telling me the stories. It could be a there could be a different variation. There could be different version of the stories from the perspective of our enemy. Of course, enemy has ended now. Now no longer war, but the perspective could be different from the Iran. The Iranian people might have different stories to tell. Similarly, he also used to hear the logographers going around and telling the stories, or rather singing the stories of the bravery of ancestors. And as this boy was very inquisitive, he also started feeling that these logographers are going around and singing the glory of our ancestors, but certain things seems to be improbable. How this can be? How one person can have the strength of 100, you know, 100%? That is how the stories are being in the mythological stories, in the bardic song stories are narrated. And but nevertheless, though mythologize these bardic songs or logographers, they have preserved the history in the oral form, because during those days writing and reading was confined to the very few people, intelligentsia, elites. And most of the people, they used to rely on the memory and these bardic songs to connect with the past, to have the sense of belongingness. See, we all live in history. For example, if you are a Maharashtrian, somewhere you have that large persona of Shivaji and Maratha at the back of your mind. If you have your identity as an Indian, somewhere Gandhi and a number of people, they affect your psyche, they affect your personality. That is how we start connecting with the past, and we have everybody have their own version of history. We imagine history. uh, Similarly, these logographers, they used to imagine history, sing the song. And as the writing was confined to the elite, this versified form of history, the poetic form of history, was easier to memorize and recollect and sing once again. It's very difficult to memorize prose book. If something is written in the prose form, it's very difficult to memorize. But if you remember your childhood when you were a school going kid, the poetry is relatively easy to memorize. We used to memorize lot many poetry when we were kids. Well, coming back to Herodotus, and now as Herodotus started growing up, he started inquiring into the how the war has taken place. He started taking interview of the people and started recording his observation. And after doing that, to verify whether the person has given him the factual information, he traveled to those areas where the wars or the battles have taken place. Then he did not remain confined to the Greek, but he also wanted inquisitive about what the Iranian people thought about the war. And as he was not knowing the Persian language, the language spoken by the Persian people or the Iranian people, he took the help of the person who is expert in both the languages, translator, and through that translator, he started communicating with those people and started gathering a lot of information. And as a result of all this long exercise, talking to his own people, talking to the Iranian people, traveling to the distant places, listening to the logographers. As a result of this exercise, this long drawn exercise, a book came out. And in fact, it is a collection of 9 books, 9 small books, and that he combinedly call it the histories. So this is the histories of Greek, histories of Herodotus, originally written in the Greek language and translated in English. and this is having 9 books compiled together. I mean, you can say that history is a book having 9 volumes, or you can say that there are 9 books combined to combinedly, which is called histories. And he gives name of the 9 Greek god to the 9 different volumes. All right. So I hope you have understood the background in which the history grew up in Greece. It came out of literature when Herodotus had tried to separate myth from the fact, tried to separate literature from history. Literature is based on imagination. Of course, imagination does have some rooting in the past, some rooting in the event, but it is you have a free play of the imagination. But the history is to be based on the factual information that can be verified either from the people who have participated in the event or by going traveling to those places. And that is what Herodotus has tried to do. He is the first recorded person who tried to separate history as a distinct discipline, as a separate subject different from literature, and that is the reason precisely that he is generally known as father of history. So I hope subject matter is clear. That is, histories, the subject matter of the writing of Herodotus is war between Greek and Persia. He is known as his father of history because he was the first person who tried to separate history from literature and make it as a distinct discipline. In fact, the meaning of the word history itself is inquiry. So he inquires scientifically, and that is the reason he is known as father of history. But all that he has written is not very scientific. No writing is 100% perfect, and he does have certain shortcoming. That he says that I have tried to verify the fact, but there are certain mythological stories, there are certain songs that he has given place to in his writing. Similarly, he was not knowing Persian language, and as a result, whatever the translator has told him, he presumed it to be true and did not verify the facts. So those there are a couple of shortcoming in his book too. But nevertheless, he is an exceptional storyteller, and his book has become very interesting. We have already discussed this, that history is not only a science, but it is an art as well. You need to verify the facts, so it is a science. But the way you narrate it, it should also be an interesting. That is the reason it is an art also. So he is a very good combination of being a scientist, historian, scientific historian, as well as a very good artist, because he have a very exceptional skill of storytelling. Everybody doesn't have that. I'm sure you must be remembering certain stories that you must have heard as a child. Nowadays, those things are going out of use, but those who are elderly person, senior person, they know it. So storytelling is an art. Everybody cannot tell the story. Earlier, during in villages and towns, we used to have a very elderly person, and we used to tell, request Aji, Azoba, tell me a story. Unfortunately, those stories have that trend is no longer. We have become a very nuclear families, and the grandparents generally don't stay with us nowadays. Well, we have to move on with the time. But nevertheless, that history was preserved in the logo by the logographers, though in a mythologized form, and which Herodotus have tried to separate. Now let me just take a look if I have missed anything. Herodotus period is 484 to 430 BC. These things you can just mug up, you have to memorize it. There is nothing that need an explanation. He was born in Ionia. I told you this is over history, 9 volume to the cities, Egypt, Babylon. His narration has not remained confined to the war only, but he also takes into account the information related to these two civilizations, Greek and Persian civilization. He is a very good storyteller. He is quite balanced and objective. He is a Greek, it is not that in his book he is only praising the Greek soldier, but wherever the Iranian soldier have shown the exceptional bravery, he does praise them as well. So he tries to be an objective. He makes an analysis. He is very inquisitive. He tries to go to the depth of the fact. then his history is also having an utilitarian purpose. He says that I am writing with the purpose so that the coming generation will know the history of conflict between the Greek and barbarian. This is an interesting thing. The Greek, whoever is not Greek, the Greek used to call them as a barbarian. That means uncivilized, because the Greek had that high sense of being a very civilized people. And he really laid the foundation, father of scientific research. Well, so this is where the narration about the Herodotus writing is over. Next important historian in the Greek tradition is Thucydides, about whom we will be discussing in the next class. If you are having any doubt about Herodotus, you can ask me.